Welcome to the One Step Ahead series, part storytelling, part podcast, and entirely a celebration. This project is a way to honor the wise beings and medicines that serve us in creating a life that is aligned with the unique beings we are, and the values that connect us to ourselves, to others, to our precious planet, and energies in the universe. You're invited to share in the intimate conversations that arise when we ponder and explore the questions: what does living in alignment feel like? What does it look like? How do we find our way, and who are the guides that can help us discover and deepen our understanding of ourselves? If you're a curious seeker, if you've known that something about your circumstances is not quite the right fit and wondered, what else is there? This is a place to open, expand, and explore. One step ahead of our past, of where we've been, one step closer to where we want to be, where we're meant to be, finding alignment. Always, still, putting one foot in front of the other. Welcome to everybody who has found their way to us for the first time, and welcome back to people who've been following along for a little while now. Some of you met us way back in our spring season, which already actually seems so long ago, even though really it's not. I think that's a sign of how quickly time is flying. I am so grateful today to be joined by Ellie McMillan as my special guest, and we're gonna tackle our fantastic conversations, just the two of us today, which is a little bit different. We are missing Sabrina, but appreciating that life, and sometimes you just got to go with the flow, be a little bit flexible. So here we are practicing doing that. Ellie sent over just a few notes. Thank you, Ellie, as a way of introducing this incredible magical human. And so I would like to acknowledge first and foremost that Ellie proudly claims the title of Sacred Pleasure Priestess. She's the host of Attune to Your Alchemy podcast. Alchemy, so much good magic in there, and a lot of the things we're going to speak to. And when I share about my experience with you, I think alchemy is a beautiful word to really encapsulate the magic and the transformation, and how those two go hand in hand. So thank you for naming your podcast that, so you can help draw in all the people that also love that word. You also offer rituals and ceremony for women that really focus on intimacy and energetic alignment. And if it's not clear already, we know that you're a great fit for our podcast. I also know that Ellie is a tarot card reader. She is a human design expert and guide, an embodiment coach, creator and facilitator of the Matriarch Collective. Those of you interested in that can head on over and find the Matriarch Collective on Facebook. I'm a proud member. I wrote down, actually, for myself, I think of you as one of the most, if not the most, magical, intuitive, fiery beings that I have ever had the pleasure of knowing and working with and learning from. I've known Ellie for close to 2 years, going on 2 years now, and I remember immediately being drawn to your energy, friend. And I think that a lot of people feel that we're in shared communities together. And I witnessed just, the power of the fieriness, and those cold dark nights where there's a great big fire and everyone just wants to gather and be in that space. And I feel like for spaces that you participate in, you bring that fieriness, and we all just kind of gravitate to your warmth and magic. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And you proudly call yourself a modern day witch. I put in the modern day part, but the witchiness, which for some people feels new and a little bit spicy, but it's funny to say that because it's so ancient at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the spiciness really comes from like, we are also high. Like I'm going in and I'm going deep.
This is why we love you so much.
So I think the spiciness really comes from like we were burned at the stake. Like I think this generation of witches and shamans and priestesses and anybody who does this sort of energy work, we are just coming out of the closet, out of the broom closet, if you will, because we're reclaiming the title that completely sent us to perishment, to death. And it feels so spicy still for some people because it's also this reclamation of work that we do. I remember one of the first times that I told somebody I was a witch in public, I was at my nail salon, and one of the new gals in the nail salon, a client, turned around to me. I had been going to this nail salon for some time. The gals there knew me. And she said, "Oh, what do you do?" And I said, "I'm a witch." And she went, "Oh, I didn't know that was a vocation." I was like, "It is. It is." And there were more questions asked about how you run a witch business after that. And I think that we're just in this reclamation, which feels really good. And it feels in alignment with who we are, being able to say who it is that we actually are.
There's a real expansion happening around not just the wisdom, but the culture of it. I actually have a really precious bundle of magical items that I received as a participant years ago now in Carmen Spagnola's The Numinous Convivium is what it was known as actually 10
Yes.
years ago. And
Wow.
I remember my body is tingling just I know exactly where it is and I've got the tingles just thinking about it. But I remember opening this bundle and this overwhelming kind of sense of this, there's so much magic in this. And I don't even know how to be with the energy of this, but I really
Mm,
take great comfort in knowing that the bundle found its way to me for all of the
mm,
right reasons, I'm sure. And as time goes on, I get more and more curious to open it again and am now savoring being in relationship with incredible wise women who understand the potency of that magic and the beauty of that magic. And we're not going to spend too much time talking about all of that, but we can't not talk about that,
mhm,
especially in relationship to alignment and authenticity. Some of these things that feel so potent, they're so natural.
mhm, mhm,
And when I think about yourself and I think about Eileen, who are the at this point the only two proud badge wearing witches that I know, but there's so much in your teachings about being in touch with nature, about being in
mhm,
touch with the seasons and cyclical living, and most importantly, being in touch with your body. And that
mhm,
is really the space that you're stepping really proudly into to help so many women who I think are starting to wake up
mhm,
and who are like me, who have this sense of the magic and the potency and the power of alchemizing the conditions in our world, in our physical ecosystems. And it seems overwhelming. The
mhm,
feelings that it can evoke, the emotions can be really mighty. And so I am just so grateful to have you saying, yeah, fuck yeah. I see you. I know exactly what you're feeling. I'm here to help you find your way.
mhm.
Yeah.
I love this. I think, you got that package 10 years ago. If I think back to my 10 years ago self, there's certain things that make their way to us that just are like, we're just gonna put this in the corner for a
Yeah.
little while. We're just gonna tuck this away, whether it's in our psyche or it's somewhere else, in our physical home or somewhere. And I think the beauty of this is that the medicine comes to us. Like this saying is the medicine comes to us when we're ready. But sometimes the medicine kind of comes knocking way before we know what the medicine's potency is. And it's so great to to have these experiences for us to be able to understand, oh, that's what that is. And it's a constant unfolding. We're literally we're constantly taking the tissue off. It's like a birthday party.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the same time, opening ourselves up to receive and
Yeah.
to be willing to learn and to trust.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love this.
I have shared often that this series is my passion project and a way for me to really honor and celebrate I still think of them as alternative healing practitioners and the modalities that they practice. I I think that alternative is starting to kind of slip away and things are becoming a whole lot more mainstream. And I'll be careful not to take us down the FTP road too far. Often when we hear in community FTP, the first person that we think about is Ellie. And yes, fuck the patriarchy. But I know for myself, I was forced is the word that comes to mind. And I'm going to acknowledge, yes, there was elements of that. And I trust that the universe said the medical system, the typical Western medical system is not for you right now. It wasn't available or accessible to me. And instead of pouring too much energy into, I'm imagining a pupper's at your feet.
Two of them are. Two of the four.
That was one thing we didn't include in the intro.
Oh,
Ellie
true.
is a very busy dog mama.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, that's sweet.
And they come with me
Um,
everywhere I go. But you were saying about the medical system. I'm
so
here with you. I'm hanging on.
yeah, at one point it just felt like I was being completely let down by a system over here, but instead of getting, swallowed into hopelessness about that, I just followed my heart
Mm,
towards, when I felt a call, I didn't necessarily understand it, but more, please. And I felt that numerous times with you. And so over the course of 2022 and 2023 and still leading into 2024, I've had the opportunity to sit in ceremony with you and to be invited into your temple for full moon celebrations, which I realized when I started tracking it back as I've been moving, further into perimenopause, what I've learned from you about the phases of the moon, the different energetic qualities of that,
mm,
the characteristics and magic of the moon in and of herself has really supported me in finding new cycles to track the ebb and flow of energy and creativity and moods that move within my body. I also called upon Ellie to help me learn about and understand first, what the heck is human design?
mm. It's everything. No.
It really that can be episodes all on its own. And for me, it was a completely new concept, but I felt called. I hunted down exactly where and when, what time I was born, and just dipping my toes in. It felt a little bit like when you can relate, or when I have been able to relate to a horoscope. Like, that actually, I can see how that fits. And I felt the same with human design, and more people were talking about it and expressing gratitude for how it was helping them understand how they arrived on the planet, the
Mm,
beautiful, unique qualities that came with them.
hmm.
And and then in understanding that, there's tremendous comfort. And then in knowing how to harness the power of those, oh my gosh. And so I'm still learning about that bit by bit by bit. I'm finding a lot of comfort and ease in that. It's not a prescription of how I'm supposed to show up, but it really helps say, here, sweet one, this might help you understand why you feel you are this way, or show up in this way, or continue to do the same things, both good and bad,
Mm,
both uplifting and unsettling. I'm on a mission to reframe good and bad to uplifting and unsettling.
Oh, I like this. I like the unsettling part. And
Yeah.
human design allows us to like decondition. I think of us like untying the things that have been tied to us because of
Mm,
who people think we are or who we think
mhm,
we need to be.
mhm,
And it has definitely helped, especially for a lot of women that I've done readings for. It's especially helped them recognize and unhook people pleasing.
mm.
Because, okay, I get to be like this. Like, I get to be this person. And therefore, that is my own uniqueness.
I was designed this way.
Yes, exactly. Literally written in the stars, people.
Often partway through an episode, we'll pause and Sabrina will have a quote on her little whiteboard that we share to spark some conversation. And when I was visiting your website, this quote said, "This is the one to share." And of course, it comes after a little bit of you sharing your story, which we're going to get into next. From Ellie. I came home to myself when I realized the pain of living a life that wasn't meant for me was greater than making changes to be fully embodied in who I knew I was.
It's such a painful process. It's such a like that realization has so much grief wrapped in it.
It really does. And for so many of us at our different points along the journey, we are still figuring out who it is we know we're meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that can feel so disorienting and
Mm-hmm.
confusing and painful because we really do, in that awareness and that awakening and learning to accept and embrace and trust our knowing around that, we have to shed and let go of the parts of ourselves that aren't ours, those bits that have been tied to us, those expectations that we're here to be a good girl,
Mm-hmm.
to care for others with every bit of our being, and really to not even consider, well, what do I need in order to keep doing this good work? Right?
Mm-hmm.
We've been programmed to believe that we arrive inherently to fulfill that purpose. And for so many, this is generation upon generation upon generation. And so it's in our DNA, it's in our cells. So when it feels sticky and sometimes almost impossible to even create shifts around that, there are good reasons for that. And we still have the opportunity to work through it and to change it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's like a cone, like a double-ended cone. We come in knowing who we are, and we start to forget as we move towards our teens. We try to assimilate, we try to fit in. We're looking for our, you know, our community. And then we have, depending on when our development is, let's say, or our maybe even let's call it awakening, we have this moment of trying to get back to that place that we entered the world in.
Mm,
We spent a lot of time conditioning it out of us, and now we're going to try to condition it back in.
mhm,
And this is
mhm.
this is the work of personal development. This is the never ending cycle of who am I.
Sabrina and I spoke about that in a recent episode as well. The who I am, I feel it relates also to the healing. And the healing never stops because this version of ourselves has to continue to do the work on behalf of all of those versions who came before. And
Yes.
as we continue to evolve, we we bring a different perspective to all of these things. Friend, would you share with us a little bit about how you came to be doing this work, to know yourself? I don't know if I think you would describe yourself as being confident. I know to me you exude confidence. And so to follow your heart, to embody who you know you're meant to be and to share that with the world with confidence. I know that Ellie 15, 20 years ago was not shining in quite the same ways. She
Oh,
was
sweet
a
child.
very different girl.
Sweet, sweet, sweet child. I have this thing that happens. So for anybody that does follow a human design, I'm a projector, a 4/6 projector even. And the 4/6 is somebody who is all about being in community, but also as a role model. And so in my life, I've realized that people have turned to me as someone to seek guidance from, both in my projector and in my 4/6 role. And I've come back to them with, let's call it like tongue in cheek sage wisdom, and then thought to myself, like, who am I to say any of that? You know, who am I? Who am I? And when we better understand ourselves through modalities like animism, like human design, like astrology, like personal development of any kind, we start to realize, oh, that's what's going on. Because I have an old coach, and she used to say, it's really hard to see the label when you're in the bottle.
Mm. Mm.
And so we have to have these experiences of being reflected upon to know who we are. Otherwise, we're just like, we're in the bottle going like, okay, well, this is just natural and normal. Doesn't everybody have this? Doesn't everyone have the same ingredients in the bottle? Doesn't everybody's wine taste this way? And so I started, I've always been, I really hesitated ever calling myself a seeker. And I remember when I first started yoga, I was like, I am not a seeker, because yogis were often referred to as seekers. And I have this moment in time where I was like looking for something, but I didn't know what I was looking for. I was like, something's not right. I'm going to try yoga. I'm going to try these personal development workshops. I'm going to try meditation. I'm going to try manifestation. I'm going to try going back to my roots. I started very early on with a fascination in witchcraft and had been practicing this, and actually even through, I like endearingly call it a non-self-identified witch. My father is, and mother for that matter, very witchy in how they co-create with the land and the world around them. And it's
Mm.
just normal. You know, for anybody who's read the book Braiding Sweetgrass, we have
Mm.
these traditions that just become like part of our being, and we don't realize that they could be, when done consciously, something very witchy, if you will,
Mm.
very traditional, if you will. And so I had all of these moments of like being in the bottle until I started to say, like, I actually don't like the ingredients in my bottle anymore. I actually don't like what's going on here, because I have conditioned myself to become someone who I am not. And this is like everyone, you know, I did the trip to Europe. I lived in Germany for a little while. I discovered my sexuality. I did all of these things, and I still was like, there's something that's not quite right. And so Ellie 10, 15 years ago was still not identifying as a seeker, would never. Still wasn't identifying overtly as a witch, was not identifying as a priestess, was not identifying any of these things, but had these really core practices that led me, because I'm somebody that's just like, I'm like Hansel and Gretel. I'm going to follow these breadcrumbs and I'm going to see where this takes me. And all of those things led me to where I am today. But in particular, some of those things are this practice of yoga and understanding, like, we can do the calisthenics of yoga. And I believe a lot of the yoga industry right now is highly calisthenic. It's like aesthetic and calisthenics. Let's call this yoga. And I was trained in a more traditional sense of yoga. My teacher was trained by someone who was trained by Iyengar directly, who is one of the like original, the original five, if you will, bringing yoga to the Western world. And the piece that's missing for me in a lot of the calisthenic practices, I love a good challenging practice. If it's met with this thread of what in my teaching would be called Tantra, it makes the class go from like a 10 to a 100.
Mm.
And that missing piece of the weaving, which is what Tantra is, the weaving of the energetics and the like on the ground, what we're doing, what's happening in the local area right now, in my local world right now, all of these things being woven together with the calisthenics, because we're literally moving energy out of our body or into. That is what was mind-blowing to me. That's what baby Ellie was like, there's something about this. And there's something about the ritual of coming to a yoga class. You know, you can go to a yoga class and just like the amount of people that just snap their mat and lay it down, that is fine. Or you can, run in late, which I am a huge fan of somebody who runs in late, because you're there. At least you made it. You know, I owned a yoga studio and I always let in late people, because you know what? You made the effort to get here.
Mm.
And or we can take our yoga mat and we can choose the place that we want to sit in the room, and we can literally unroll our mat, like by way of devotion to ourselves and our practice. We can choose the props that are going to support us. We can come to a position that is like supportive in this way, sitting, supine, whatever it is. And that's when we start our actual practice of like unfolding and reweaving, as tantric yoga does. And this is one of the main threads for me that I continue to pull on in terms of alignment and in terms of how I live my life, because we can just brush our teeth, or we can really brush our teeth.
Mm.
And we can care for our mouths, and we can care for ourselves by way of this. It's just a different way of doing things in life. And so I think that's the beginning threads of how baby Ellie came to be.
Thank you, friend. A line that you said stood out to me: conditioned to become someone I am not. And what a clear definition of misalignment.
Mm-hmm. I remember, I have this story to tell you about me growing up. I remember my mom. So as projectors, we do have a penetrating aura. That's why we're like the fire that you're coming around to. And part of that penetration is luring people towards us, hence the fire. And I can see what you can't see for yourself. I can see your label, but I can also see your ingredients in the bottle at the same time for yourself. And I think it's fascinating that as a kid, I internalized my talent of really getting to the bottom of something as negative, when actually it was a compliment from my mom. My uncle was dating somebody, her brother was dating somebody, and I maybe was 12, 13. And I remember leaning in and being like, well, do you love her? Like, what's going on here? Are we taking this seriously? We're not. And post this, my mom said to me, oh, we'll send you in to get to the bottom of this. And I remember thinking to myself, like, maybe I'm too much. Maybe this is people don't like this. Now, projectors have their own issues by way of this, and waiting for an invitation, but we also have a talent in getting you to agree to an invitation. So yeah, it was this moment in time where I thought to myself, like, oh God. And has later in life become quite a talent of mine.
Friend, does that contribute to your own exploration on your journey? Do you think that you You get to the bottom of it, something doesn't feel quite right. And so you go in and you go looking, you try and figure out what is it that's not working out for me here. And baby Ellie might not have had the words alignment, but she might have been feeling, okay, yes, over here, fuck no, over here.
Yeah. I feel like I constantly have my hard hat and headlamp on. We're just going in and we're gonna see where the dark corners are. And speaking of archetypal things, as a Scorpio, you were saying something at the beginning of the podcast around this alluring gentleness. At least that's what I heard. And
I love
Scorpios are known for like having waves that are on fire.
it.
Like the essence of a Scorpio, we are a water sign, but we're the fieriest water sign that you've ever did meet. And so this is exactly what I feel like. I'm getting to the bottom, going into the shadows. We're gonna expose what we need to expose so that we can actually get to the bottom of what's going on here.
Have you had periods of time in your life where you felt stuck and unable to find your way in the
Oh,
dark?
in the quote that you read of like,
Hmm.
it became so painful that even though I was going down with my headlamp on, I was not able to see because my eyes were closed. I was too afraid to see
Hmm.
what I was going to see.
Mhm.
So I had to, you really have to have this moment, this reckoning, and this moment in time where you go, oh, actually, this is not worth the pain that it's causing.
Mhm. I thought it was such a beautiful, visceral metaphor of wearing hard hat. I love the hard hat too, because it's like I am prepared to take whatever shit is coming down. Headlamp ready to go. But none of this is going to do any good if we're not willing to see. And there can be so many parts of ourselves, emotions, lots of different energies that are really in control of whether we're willing to open our eyes or not.
Mm-hmm.
I hazard to say fear is often behind there. And
Shame,
even, yes,
guilt, grief.
a pure lack of awareness and
Mm-hmm.
maybe a lack of skillfulness in being able
Mm.
to take it in and then process, okay, what does this actually mean? Yeah. When we think about alignment and misalignment, how do you experience those two things differently in your body? What were the signs to you that something is not right? And then what actually brought you to a place of being able to open your eyes and really start exploring what it was that you found there?
I think that when I reflect back on this, there's a few things like, I ended a marriage a couple of years ago and it was a long relationship. And, 12 years, that's a long time.
Mm,
And in doing so, I had these sort of like micro tendencies that built up over time to the realization, because often our body speaks before our mind can interpret that. And our body speaks, especially in how our wealth and the wealth of our health is, our cravings, our regular diet outside of cravings, like what we end up like navigating towards. All of this adds up to the physical realization and mental realization coming together. Like the
mm,
heart and the head start to align. And for me, I have realized that I have physical symptoms that are associated with energetic misalignments.
mm,
And the physical symptoms, which we often have, I think about, a friend of mine telling me a story about how her colleague tragically bragged about how at his retirement party never took a day off in his 20 some years of service. And then a few weeks later passed away after retirement.
mm.
And we are led to believe that retirement is like that's our golden ticket. That's when we can start living our life. children are out of the house, if we have kids, they're grown up, they have their own families, we get to do the fun things as the grandparents, if you will. And we no longer have work responsibilities. And maybe we have a little bit of extra money that we saved up over the years that we can actually do something fun with. And then we have this tragedy that happens. And so our body is constantly talking to us, whether it's taking us down. Like I had a reckoning last week of like brought to my knees with this nasty cough and respiratory things that were going on. And I realize how, when my body is speaking to me like this, I need to stop and listen. I also have noticed symptoms, if you will, let's call them symptoms, of like how I spend my time. The more I avoid doing things that are actually really nourishing for me, solo walks, as somebody who I love my solo time, naps, going out by myself, going out as my family, the gym, walks in nature, being by the ocean, all of these things. When I start to realize like, oh, none of that was in my day, something's going on.
Mm.
And even when we talk about alignment and being in alignment, we're not excluded of like, oh, we're aware of this now. This will never happen again. It's more painful when it happens again because we quote unquote know better,
Mhm.
you know? And what I find, and from some of the women that I've worked with, it's often physical symptoms. I used to work with people, especially around being off work, like having a medical claim that they were off on short-term disability. And I worked with them to get them back to work. And my number one question to them was, what happens if you didn't go back to work?
Mm.
What happens if you never went back to the place that you went to? I mean, you can never go back to the place that you were because things have changed enough now. But what does your nervous system do if you were to never go back to that place? What would happen? Yeah. I see a
That,
reflection.
yeah, that really hit me in the feels, that one. I've mentioned briefly on the show that I was on a leave of absence from work and that I didn't go back. But I realized later that I didn't really get into why that is. And I'm just imagining now if someone had asked me that question. And when I first went off on leave, my thought was, I am physically and mentally unable to work right now. I need this time. And as the time passed and I started to feel more capable, I also had to start reconciling, well, what happens if I go back? And the sad and beautiful lesson really that I took around the work that I do and the unexpected passing of my sister, she lost the battle of mental health, and for so long had been so hopeless. And that was one of the things that we connected on so strongly. The job that I had prior to her death provided so much as far as financial means and
Mhm.
a sense of professional satisfaction. And it was sucking the life out of me. I had nothing left for myself, for my family, for my future, but I had that paycheck, and there was so much stock put into that paycheck and all that it could provide. But over time, I listened to my own body saying, you can't go back. And not necessarily knowing what else instead, but
Mm.
having the willingness, the ability, and the support, acknowledging there's a lot of privilege tied into that, to choose to say, I would rather be broke than broken. Oof.
Mm. What a realization.
Truly, it truly was. And even today as an entrepreneur who's a solopreneur, who's a soulpreneur trying to really do heart-centered work in the world, I believe wholeheartedly in that. And parts of me miss those golden handcuffs. But when I really sit with the value of each side of that, I still struggle with my mental health. And how much more well off am I now that I can take the time I need to tend to that? And I really appreciate, Ellie, you highlighting those more subtle elements of how this can manifest and show up in our life, because I am blessed to have very good health and my body is mighty. She puts up with whatever shit she has to put up with. It's the parts on the inside that crack, that say, I don't want to. Not that I don't know it's good for me, but I need to just retreat and hold myself in this space. And it's those moments of awareness of realizing, okay, thank you for the self-compassion and creating that container to hold all of that. And please notice you're not spending time in nature. You're not spending time by the water. You're not just indulging opportunities for curiosity to be playful and to be present. And then I have to take a step back and say, okay, there's something that's not in alignment here, which gets really muddy when it feels like, but I'm so empowered and making all of these good choices and building the life that I want to live. But there's always this coming back to, okay, well, what do you need to look at next? What do you need to shine a spotlight on and start excavating and exploring? Because I tended to one area of my world, but I feel like there are other areas that require this tending to. I think the work that you do is so exquisite because it really can guide people from the start of a dawning awareness to oh yeah, I got it all figured out, to, oh fuck, that's not what I thought it was. What's next? What's next? And that projector part of you, and you've done this for me multiple times, you just kind of grab perspective and cause a shift. Have you seen it through my lens? Have you seen what I can see for you, which opens up fields of possibility that when we're stuck in here, that being reflected by others. And thank you for seeing me in this little moment here, because as you were talking, all of this was, oh, I haven't thought about it that way. I haven't shared this part of my journey. Yeah. Kindred spirits, friend. Kindred spirits indeed.
Yes.
We've touched on the importance of living an aligned life from kind of a physical mental health awareness level, but there's so much more richness that we can open ourselves up to. And I would love it if you would speak a little bit to some of the deeper, maybe some of the saucier, some of the more powerful ways that women can, in particular, start arriving into themselves and start blossoming with.
This is my favorite part.
I know.
When we put on our hard hats together with our lights and we go in together. I think that one of the reasons that we start with such a surface level is because we're building this trust with ourselves where we can say, oh, yes, actually, I do have these tendencies. And I want to speak to, like, women of the world today are in a baseline burnout culture.
Mm.
It is baseline that we are burnt out. But why are we burnt out? Yes, we're overworked. Yes, we have kids potentially. Yes, we have 4 dogs that are being a nuisance. Yes, we have, pickups and drop-offs and friend dates and friends have moved up in other places and we're still trying to maintain and online and social media and all of these expectations. And it's almost made it seem like our baseline for burnout becomes the inability to ever make the Like we miss the mark constantly. We're constantly missing the mark. And even when we go to bed at night and we're like, okay, well, we checked all the things off our to-do list. We checked all of them off. Even when we've checked off all of the to-dos in our to-do list, we're still left with this existential dread of like, tomorrow. We have to rebuild the to-do list for tomorrow. And what's missing, what I'm seeing in general, what's missing is this connection to source. So for some people, we call this religion or spirituality. The reason I want to call this connection to source is because we can go to church and not be in the holy embodiment that we are. We can go to church because we are seeking that outside of ourselves in hopes that that flame will be lit. And we can go to church and be the embodiment of that spirituality, of that sacredness. And what I find as we continue this burnout culture is that we get further and further away from what actually feeds our source. And going to the water, yes, of course, being out in nature, walking in the woods with one of my pups in particular, just like literally running trails with her. Oh, that is good. That is medicine for my soul. And when I come back home, I still have the same poop to clean up off the floor. I still have the same laundry to do. I still have everything else that's on my to-do list that now has piled up even more because I've taken time out for myself in nature. And so when we start to deep dive into the places that bring us the deeper connection, the to-do list has less hold on us. So in particular, because this is the place that I love to go, when we talk about intimacy and sensuality, we have lost our ability as women to be adored, like baseline, just to be in our own energy, our own feminine aligned energy, and be receptive of that adoration, which is like a baseline for us. This is like when we talk about yesteryear, this is a baseline that is coming into present moment, And we have to have practices that the reason, it's funny that you said into me whenever you were introducing me, because intimacy is into me, you see. And so what intimacy does for us, this is the difference between brushing our teeth and brushing our teeth with intention, is that we are seeing ourselves as stewards of our bodies. And we have missed, we're like, I'm blowing the doors wide open on this. We are turning the lights on in the room so that everybody can see. We have really lost the ability to deeply connect. We were more connected than we've ever been in our whole entire lives through social media. And we have lost the ability to be connected because of all of the separation that has happened between us and other women. So we're going to go down before we come up for just a second. Come with me. For years, we have been pitted against each other. We all carry a really deep sisterhood, motherhood, witch wound. All three of these have the same golden threads woven together. And because of this, we have lost our ability to be truly intimate with other women. Now, can this mean that we all take our clothes off in temple and prance around or do other fun things, if you will, while in space together? Yes. And it can also mean that we are in our joy just admiring and adoring others, where we're in our joy anointing each other with sacred holy oils for the sheer love of it. That we care for each other in a way that, I speak to this, and you might have a similar experience. When you lose a family member, there's always a lasagna that shows up at the house. You know, I love a lasagna. Don't get me wrong, but that sacred lasagna, which, if we think about it, a lasagna is not an easy thing to make. It's not
Oh,
like a piece of toast, you know? We don't just throw that in there and butter it up. It's not a loaf of sandwiches. It takes time and care for these things. But we have substituted our intimacy and truly being with people, even through grief, by presenting them a lasagna.
mm,
I made this for you. Here, have this. And we do this because we think this is what needs, like the sacred lasagna needs to be done.
that's right.
So we have these moments, the sacred lasagna comes and of course we're appreciative, but when you go away and when that lasagna is eaten,
Mm,
then what?
mm,
Then what? We're still left. And so the missing piece, this coming back to this burnout, turning the lights on in the room means that we actually need more experiences in our life where we are able to be intimate with each other, that we're able to seek sacred pleasure practices. And yes, we can talk about, like I said, about this whole side of sacred pleasure that is actually often practiced in the bedroom or the temple for that matter. But we can also do it in terms of how we make our coffee in the morning,
mhm,
how we call and interact and commune with our friends and family, how we listen to the needs of
mm.
our animals. They just want attention. They don't want to be picked up. Just pay attention to me. There's something here for you. And this is a huge difference in terms of fulfillment, that even when we still have that to-do list, now becomes something that is, I want to say magical, but magical in the sense of, this is important. I get to do this. This no longer a priority for me. I used to say in the yoga class, you make space, you run and you rush to then calm down in yoga class. And you have debated before you come to yoga class because you've got a million different things to do and so many things you could be doing other than coming. And then you leave yoga class and you're like, what was that I was supposed to do again?
Mhm,
Like, your priorities shift.
mhm,
And so I think the biggest solution, the biggest piece that's missing from this epidemic of burnout, especially for women in the world, is the connection to source and sacredness, this alignment with who we are. And we think, again, coming back to this isn't outside of ourselves. This isn't necessarily church. This isn't organized religion. This is a communion, a weaving of things, elements, observations. We talk about this in animism, like everything is alive.
mm.
Everything has a spirit. When we're able to wipe our eyes from the expectations of society, #FTP, we're able to really see what's going on here, what's actually going on here.
Thank you for sharing all of that, Ellie. I I was madly scribbling down some notes. This sacred lasagna is it's a poignant example because it's almost like there is so much rolled into that offering coming from the cook, the creator who prepared it in, I see you, I see your pain, I feel helpless towards that. I can pour my love into this physical form of sustenance and share that with you. And then there's kind of a disconnect, I think, as well. There can be a bit of a withdrawing. Okay, I've taken care of that now. I can continue with my life.
On to the next thing.
On to the next thing. Whereas it takes a very conscious and concerted effort to continue to choose to meet someone in their vulnerability during those
Mm,
times and
mhm.
I think a lot of us, we just don't know how. And
Mm,
that's part of this legacy that you've been talking about. And if it's happened to someone else, then it can be something on our to-do list that we tick off. When it happens to us, it's our entire world. And thank you for seeing me, and thank you for this offering. And please just stay by my side. Right? There's nothing else required but that presence and that connection. And when those moments do happen, that's another really beautiful place to meet spirit and to
mhm,
connect with those really deep, loving layers of ourselves. Uh,
mhm,
But it's really challenging to make that a priority when it
mhm,
feels like it's an option.
mhm. Oh my gosh. This is the plague and the plight. This is exactly where we stand every day.
Mm.
We can make any choice. Sometimes my love comes home for dinner and she's like, "What do you want to eat?" I was like, "You decide." I have hit my quota of answers to give today. You decide. And then she'll be like, "Okay, well, do you want always chicken or steak?" You decide. You decide where we go, if we're going to go out. You decide how it's made, if we're staying in. You decide. Because we have maxed out on everything that we do in our lives. We have decision fatigue, but we have this decision fatigue because we've lost our ability to plug into source.
Mhm. First and foremost with ourselves, and
Mm-hmm.
then in community.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Into me you see. I wrote
Mm-hmm.
that down too. One of the things I've personally appreciated about your teaching is raising a level of awareness around sensuality and what that means. For many, it immediately comes with the connotation of sex, and we can see where that comes from. And so then that can become something else that I'm supposed to be doing, or
Mm-hmm.
a pressure that one might feel. But there's so much more deliciousness around sensuality. And you mentioned anointing your body with oils and on each other. And I know I learned from you the practice of drawing and really savoring a sacred bath with,
Mm-hmm.
the beautiful oils and flower petals. I actually have a little bowl of dried roses from my birthday flowers. And so when it's
Mm-hmm.
time for a special bath, I can sprinkle some of these petals that were gifted to me with love, and my rose oil in there, and a little bit of sea salt.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the option of appreciating the it's sort of a ceremony, right? When you're finished with your bath, then you can soothe your skin with wonderful smelling moisturizers, and you can slip into a robe that you just melt into. And sensuality is so much more, and it can be just so perfectly simple and individual,
Mm-hmm.
and so empowering, and such a sweet way to care for our vessel, our being,
Mm-hmm.
and to connect with nature and all of the elements of water and fire and air and everything that comes together to create those beautiful spaces. How do you think practices like that support? And I'm imagining someone who says, I don't take baths, I have a shower, I got shit to do. How does slowing down in these ways that could be considered very mundane and turning them into ceremony, how does that serve us as in ways that help us connect with
Mm.
source, do you think?
Yeah, I think that I think first of all, like the bath in this particular example is the act because we can create ceremony around anything. If we think about it, we actually have many
Mm.
ceremonies that we practice in life, like anniversaries, birthdays, births, deaths, like all of this in general. There's quite a theme around celebration of life and therefore end of life. But we can create ceremony around so many things. What it really is, like if we take the elements out of ceremony and we look at them just like on a table flat and go, okay, what's actually here? It's intention.
Mm.
And intention for us, it's fine if somebody doesn't like baths or doesn't like sacred smelling things. One of the things that we did, and I just came home at the time of this recording from an experience through my priestess training, a week-long immersion. I don't think we can call it a retreat. It was an initiation, actually. It was definitely an initiation. And one of the practices that we did for an archetype that we study was partnering up. And this is something that I incorporate into my magnetic program, is partnering up and actually just completely honoring another woman. Feathers, chocolate, like sacrament, berries, chocolate, lovely tasting things, essential oils, holy anointing oils to anoint them, to rub their feet. A woman touching another woman's foot or feet and just being like, these holy things walk the earth every day. Because this is part of how we can move something from we're just going to go take a walk to we're going to intentionally take a walk, which then can become our ceremony. And so this honoring of what it is that we do shifts the perspective. It's kind of like we can cook our chicken or steak, or we can cook our chicken or steak with spices.
Mm.
And that creates a different dish. I love a food reference. I love a food metaphor. That creates a different dish for us. How we chop up our ingredients, that creates a different dish for us. We can have the same ingredients for two different dishes, but they taste completely different because of how they're prepared. This is really what this is. It's like when we talk about the aspect of ceremony, it actually has nothing to do. When you were talking about your rose petals, I was like, oh, imagine walking from, I just pictured you having a backyard with a fire pit, walking from home to the fire pit to do a ceremony and burning, like a full moon ceremony. We're getting rid of the shit that we no longer need. But what you're doing is you're letting go of those rose petals from the year that you've said goodbye to welcome in a new year. And you unfurl the petals if they're dried and drop them with every step you take towards the fire to let whatever it is that you're letting go. Like there is so much that we can do that changes from the mundane to plug us into that spiritual aspect of things, that sacredness of things.
Mm. The power of intention taken to whole new levels. Really.
Yeah, I have this like beef. Let's come with me out down this journey for
Oh,
just a
please
second.
take me there.
I have this beef with yoga teachers that say at the beginning of class, okay, set your intention for class. Because I just came in from a stressful situation, probably, and I got myself parked and mat unrolled and possibly some non-dog hair stretchy pants on to come to class. And now you want me to set my own intention? Can I set my own intention? Absolutely. But there is a difference when you go to a yoga class where the teacher says, just set your intention for today. Maybe it's this and maybe it's that. To you coming into the experience of the yoga class, you're met with the teacher who tells you, come in, make yourself at home. Everyone's sitting on their mat. We're about to start practice. Okay, everyone, tonight, let's go on this journey. The journey is through whatever the theme of the class is. That is a completely different experience than coming in and just being like, okay, what's my intention? Okay, and then halfway through class, we're like, oh yeah, my intention was to calm the fuck down. And I'm stressed out because we're in this seated forward fold and that sucks actually. And so I don't really want to be doing that right now. And if that's the case, then our intention's lost. Our challenge is there, but our intention is lost. And instead, We can go from that to the teacher constantly just like a little dropper, dropping in the theme of the yoga class as we continue to go along. Okay, here is where we're going to continue to unfurl that petal. And here is where we're going to continue to unfurl that petal. That's my beef with yoga teachers.
Imagine the ease for everyone who's gotten themselves to a yoga class. That in and of itself is filled with intention. It's
Mhm.
filled with intention. And I know that exact feeling where, okay, my mat's here, laying down, having a stretch, whatever the case may be. And then now there's a homework assignment. There's
Yeah.
an accountability piece that's brought into it. Like, shoot, haven't I already? I'm here. I'm
I
on
did
my
my
mat.
part.
Guide me. So
Yeah.
I love what you're saying. I love that suggestion. And it really, it marries the two worlds of acknowledging the intention that required students to get themselves there, to arrive, to stay, and then with the little dropper to help just gently guide them on a meaningful experience, a meaningful journey through that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, kind of again, tongue in cheek, imagine coming to my temples and me being like, okay, guys, it's full moon, just whatever you want to do tonight. Okay, now switch positions. Whatever you want to do next.
There are a lot of environments, truth be told, especially in the area of self-development, where
Mhm.
it's often even going into meditation is set an intention, whereas arriving on your cushion is an expression of intention.
Mhm.
Can we just hold space now to see what
Mm.
arises, what calls and comes forth to be acknowledged and maybe tended to a little bit later? But there's this really funny control piece that I think is a
Mhm.
reflection of our society of, I need to make this meaningful and valuable, and I'm going to choose this. And then there's all of the awkward accountability that goes along with that. So halfway through, oh shit, I forgot my intention, or you're right, like, get me off this freaking mat. This is not getting me to the place that I had hoped it would be. One of the things I love about a really skillful yoga teacher, though, is always, of course, the invitation to not do.
Oh.
That doesn't come up all the time. There's often advice to modify your posture or whatever, but not every teacher invites you to simply be in whatever physical shape is most suited for what you need to tend to, what brought you there. I love the traditional teachings of yoga, and I I have okay, showing my age. I get tremendous amusement out of a lot of kind of contemporary yoga classes. I shared a post on social recently about all of the different people who arrive in those spaces. And there's so many different personalities, including, like you said, those ones that come and they gently unroll their mat and they create their space and they arrive there, to the ones who arrive by rushing in the door. It feels like get in, do the thing, and get out. But for those of us who find something a little deeper on the mat, we're already filled with a little bit of ceremony, starting with gathering. I need to have my bolster and my mat and my water, and again, all of that's fused with the intention of taking ourselves to this space where we can, at very least, unwind and move some of
Mm.
that energy. That's always been
Yes.
what gets me to the mat, is unwind, stretch, create those long, strong pathways for the energy to just move through. And sometimes it's better than others, and sometimes it's more stressful than others, but there tends to almost always be a sweetness with it. Yeah. When you look around, and particularly thinking about the women that you share space with and the women that you guide and teach, what do you recognize in them as being kind of out of alignment, but at the same time expressing a potential for finding their way into greater alignment. You wouldn't do this work if you didn't see the evolution of the beings that you help. And I'm wanting us to think a little bit about how does misalignment present for people, and how
Mm,
can, as we're waking up and learning and developing awareness, what does it look like when people start being able to recognize a different
mhm.
level of alignment?
Yeah, I think, you know, we talked about a little bit about physicality. I think when we're out of alignment, we can often find ourselves in discomfort in our physical body. And that might mean tight muscles, it might mean injury, it could be a number of things. But the baseline that I've seen over the years for people who are interested, and you know, it's so funny that we talk about this as well. I'm reflecting back, you know, for 15 years I taught alignment yoga. I'm not even kidding, that's the name of the class.
Mhm.
Alignment yoga. But the baseline for this is curiosity,
Mm,
is the willingness. That doesn't mean that there's not restriction. That doesn't mean that there's not fear or shame or guilt or hesitation, but there's a bigger spark of curiosity than those things. They can be present together. I think when we're curious, what ends up happening is that we have the ability to want something that is not what we that we don't yet have.
mhm.
So if we want this, we have the willingness to see what's on the other side of whatever it is that we're currently experiencing.
Mm.
We have the willingness to like peek around the curtain and be like, what's here for me, you know?
And that can be a subtle curiosity too, right? Or even a bit of a stubbornness. This isn't working for me anymore. What else is there?
Mm-hmm.
Just what else is there? And being open to, hmm, 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 and tuning into how that feels. And
Mm-hmm.
we've talked quite a bit in this series about the embodied feeling of the full body fuck yes, and the contraction of a full body no, and acknowledging that the ability to tune in and sense into those things is actually quite skillful. And for a number of people, it can be a lot more subtle than that. Curiosity is such a sweet, sweet space, because it's not only a distraction from what we're not digging on, but it also really can lead to so many unknown possibilities.
It's interesting, this whole fuck yes and fuck no thing. If we relate this to human design, there is a certain and a large portion of of y'all that are a fuck yes and a fuck no. And then there's a certain section of us that are, I'm not a fuck yes, fuck no. I am an emotional wave. How does this make me
Mhm.
feel? Which is, we're tuning into the subtleties of this, you know? How does this make me feel? Because I can be really excited about something, but it's still not a fuck yes.
Curious.
And then the next morning, you know, us emotional types, we say we have to ride the wave. And so usually I give myself at least 24 hours before I say yes to something. And I say, if it's something that is already not in my realm,
Mm.
if I've set the intention to like, you know, speak on people's podcasts and whatnot, then sometimes it's a matter of just actually fine tuning. Is this the right podcast? Is this the right place?
Mm.
You know? And so this subtlety, this subtle change of riding that emotional wave. And then there's other people that actually have to wait a whole lunar cycle, a whole 28 days. Now, can they make decisions before the 28 days? Yes, they can. And it's often in best alignment when they have a whole picture of things,
Mhm.
which comes with the cycle of the moon. So to you know, to relate this bigness and the subtleness with people, and some people they get this like butterflies in their stomach, or like the bottom sinking out of their stomach. For some people it's very much heart led. They're like, yes, no. And then the rest of us are like, have you watched the movie? What's the Feelings movie that just came out, number 2?
Oh, I don't even know. Oh, is it animated?
Yes.
I know the one you mean. Inside?
Inside Out 2.
Inside Out. That's it.
We just watched it last weekend. I could not remember the name of it though. It's kind of like Inside Out 2. There's all of these emotions that are going on, and it depends on what it is in your design, your literal design, that how you feel things.
That is fascinating. And I'm really appreciating you sharing that awareness with me, because as somebody who feels the yes and the no and doesn't tend to, I hold space for all of my emotions. I can't say that I trust all of my emotions,
Yeah,
which
you might not be dominant. And I can't remember what your
I am a 6'2" Manigen.
managing. Do you know if you're sacral? You're
I
sacral.
definitely am sacral. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why you feel those big yeses and big nos.
Yeah. For folks where it's more subtle, my parts of me are, oh, it's got to be so much more challenging, because our emotions, when we let them move through us, they can come fast and furious and kind of seemingly be all over the place. Or for me, some of them just get lumped into a big bucket of, oh, sad, or
Mm-hmm.
oh, bright. And it's hard for me to fathom making decisions from those places. So I think it's really valuable, important that we're talking about this for anyone out there who relates to exactly what you've just described as another way of knowing, and the importance of being able to be in alignment with our precious, beautiful meat suits and our heart and our intellect, because there's so much that goes into those emotions. They're both very simple, but also very complex at the same time. And they can pull us in all kinds of different directions. So yeah, I imagine it being challenging to make decisions from those places, but that's because it's a perspective that I don't experience directly. So thank you very much for highlighting and describing it in that way.
And for us emotionals over here, it's like I can almost piece out like a color all of my
Hmm.
emotions.
Hmm.
I just piece them all out. Sometimes they're displaced. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know what I'm feeling right now. I can't quite tell what color this is. But it's less lumpy and more finite, because that's the talent, is really what they are. That's the talent that I have versus the talent that you have.
Oh.
Speaking of, this guy's a manifesting generator. He's also a Scorpio.
Oh, he's melting my heart.
Yeah, this is both of those two things are the exact reason why he would melt anyone's heart, and yet is the biggest brat on the face of the earth,
Oh.
and is unapologetic about any of it.
Yeah, he just owns it.
Yeah, he's an emotional manifesting generator, though.
You do know how to surround yourself with kindred spirits, don't you, Ellie?
Yeah, that I do.
I think we're getting close to winding down our conversation. Might you have a few minutes to go a little bit longer?
I do.
Okay. Because before we do wind down, I wanted to ask you, given all of this good stuff that we've been talking about, how does the work that you do in all of the different realms and capacities support your clients in getting to know themselves, coming to a place of authenticity, and thus being empowered to make self-informed choices towards creating more aligned living for themselves?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the first things that it does, like, it's this really subconscious shift that ends up happening, that I end up seeing women go from seeking outside of themselves to seeking inside of themselves first.
Mm,
So they're looking for the answers by trusting their intuition more and more versus looking for outside validation, perspective, any of those things. And
mm,
in turn, what this does, I keep coming back to this, is, are we doing like really intimate, sacred, sensual practices in the work that I do? Yes. Why? Like, what's the point? Besides, it feels good, it's self discovery, all of those things. But I come back to the why of this in that it makes us a better communicator.
Mm.
And then, why a better communicator? What happens when we're able to communicate better, both with ourselves and with the people around us? We become more happy. We become happier because we're able to express ourselves and ask for what we need and say what we don't.
Mm.
And we're able to internally process, the head and the heart align enough that we're able to see ourselves more from the perspective of outside of the bottle than inside of the bottle. We can flip and go back and forth. And so this communication not only makes us a better lover, a better sibling potentially, a better parent potentially, a better person at a career woman, if you will, like at your work. It also creates a better system that we live in that feels less disconnected.
Mm.
And so the more connected we are through understanding ourselves and seeing ourselves better, the better work we can do in the world.
Mhm.
Whether that's a physical job, raising children, whatever it is, like parenting dogs, any of these things. It trickles down into all aspects of our lives.
Truly.
And that communication, that like one line communication with ourselves allows for us to at any point seek source.
Mm.
And when we can hook into source, we can plug into that source, we then come back. It's like a loop. We come back to being a better communicator. A better communicator, we're able to plug back into the source. And that's like this whole concept of 10% happier. I have not read that book, but I've read statistics around there's a tipping point in financial growth. And that at one point, more money from this tipping point does not equal happier. What makes us happier is how we spend our time.
Mhm.
And we spend an awful lot of time with ourselves.
Yeah, truly.
Mhm.
You guide women to find their way home to themselves. I
Yes,
love
I
that.
do.
I love that. To bring it back around to you can't read the label from inside the bottle. There's a sense of empowerment and expansion to be all of the goodness that's on the inside of the bottle, and then stepping into a place of, so my brain is imagining the being in the bottle, and the being in the bottle trying to be what those on the outside looking at the bottle are expecting the bottle to do. So you're the magical elixir that's going to take care of everything that the family needs, and you're going to build this successful career, and all of these expectations of others, and generations, and the programming and the systems that we're in. And meanwhile, that beautiful serum in the bottle, it just feels like it's shaken up and it's a mess and it doesn't really know what's going on. But after finding ways of coming home to themselves, of learning from other wise souls who have done this work, who are skillful guides, now they can be both the beautiful, magical elixir serum in the bottle, and they can hold the bottle, and they
Mm,
can choose to create whatever label they want to represent who
mm,
they know themselves to be on the inside.
mhm.
It went from a vision of somebody else holding the bottle, shaking it up. I'm going to do this and it's going to do this. And these are the results. And the bit in the bottle's going, "Oh, that's not what I'm here for." And then all of a sudden, that person falls away. And there's this empowered individual who holds and tends to and shares and uses all of that goodness in whatever ways are aligned with the ingredients on the inside to really blow up what was already a good metaphor and just make it really big.
To make it even bigger.
To make it even bigger. Thank you so much, friend, for sharing your time, your pups. I know that it's a busy, busy world over at your place, and that little face. Oof.
It's hard to deny
Yeah,
any requests that come out of this individual.
yeah, yeah. I know my little Molly dog, she's very similar, but she would not be, well, she's a little bit bigger. She's not a lap dog. She's definitely one of those, I don't want you to pick me up, but I do want you to spend time with me. And they
Can you
are,
sit down so I can sit next to you?
yes, or get up so you can come and crouch and give me all the good scratches.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
she's
true.
not a fan of the office chair, but she likes the rug in the office where we can cuddle.
Hilarious.
The best medicine for tapping into presence and awareness and gratitude and love. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a
Thank you
reason I
so.
have 4.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a delight.
I'm so glad. Yeah. I think Sabrina will be sorry to have missed the conversation. I have really enjoyed just this. I don't remember a time ever where we carved out a couple of hours just to spend together in really meaningful conversation, and it's been really, really good.
This has
I'm
been perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Super uplifting and so enriching. And thank you so much to all of our viewers and listeners. I will be sure to include all the good ways to connect with Ellie in the show notes, and can't recommend her enough. Find her, follow her. And if any part of you is feeling a call, if your curiosity is piqued, just act on it, because there's magic. There's going to
There
be
is
magic
magic.
behind it without a doubt. Yeah. Thank you all, and very, very best wishes.